NLL Talk. And of course, our co host is Gary Grubin. We have a very special guest today, Curtis Conley of the New York Riptide. There he is. Big screen. Curtis, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're great. Thank you so much for doing it.
Good.
No problem at all. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. All right. So let's start with what we always ask. We always ask players like you and people who are involved in the game. How did you get started? How did you pick up the stick?
Yeah, so I actually come from Ottawa. So when I was growing up, a little bit of a smaller city, a little bit of a smaller center where lacrosse wasn't huge. And honestly, my parents, we were just at an arena one day. One of my brothers were finishing up their hockey practice, and them and another parent said, "There's this little flyer for lacrosse, kind of like the take one if you're interested, and call the association to sign up." And that's what they did. And then I kind of just tagged along, going to practices and games for 2 years. And then when I was old enough, I finally picked up the stick, and I was lucky where I had a great group of guys who I was able to grow up with and who I basically played with or knew of or played against from the time I was in Tyke all the way to midget.
Now, what about the game do you like the most?
I think honestly, like kind of the new wave, the speed of the game. Obviously, I think Gary can attest to it. Last night in Brampton, it was a track meet at times, but I think that's a testament to kind of the speed and athleticism that the game's grown to, and kind of just the way it's played now, along with that physicality. I think it's just overall, it's just the best sport, the most fun sport, and I just I'm lucky that I get to do it every week.
Now, normally we play the "This Is Your Life" thing, but you brought up last night's game, and I want to bring up your team of Colbert for your summer ball, and I really love the team. It's one little ingredient of some sort away from doing really great things, and it shows really great signs of being a great team, and then it has like a 3-minute or 4-minute brain cramp, and then that puts you in a hole. Same thing happened last night. You guys had this game in hand. About 4 minutes, everything went sideways, and then you guys got back on track again.
Yeah, I think coming from last year, we were lucky. A couple of us older guys had talked to John and mentioned to John, we really need kind of like a stable coaching staff, and he brought in, Brandon Francis and Daryl Gibson, who are two grade A coaches, and then we still got Kroger back on the bench. So with that young team, it really, we were able to work past, obviously, we're in all these games. We should be winning all these games. We feel like even against the Peterborough and Six Nations, the time of going into the game and saying, oh, well, we're supposed to lose. That's gone now. Like we're good enough. We're there. It's just a young team. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be mental lapses. There's going to be brain farts. That's the way the game goes when you're young. But, as a team, I think we've done a really good job, sticking together, helping each other through that, because we're all trying to go to the same place. We all want to win games. No one's happy being 2-10. So even though, we have that young team, mistakes are going to happen, but the important part is just to grow together rather than obviously growing apart.
Right, because all you need to do is get your toe in the playoffs, and then away you go. And, I think that team could gel when push comes to shove.
Well, exactly. And, I know me and you had been talking about Scott Domney before, who you know really well. He's been fantastic with those young guys. It's weird to say because I think he's only 25 or 26, but he's probably one of the oldest guys on our team, right? So that kind of puts into perspective how young our team actually is. But like you said, you just need to get your foot in the door. Last year we saw it against Nations. We got swept, and we played them hard every game. Like I think it was 2 overtime games and 2 1 or 2 goal games. So the ingredients are there. It's just putting it all together.
Right. Now, you alluded to Brandon Francis being the new coach. Let's talk a little bit about him. And it looks like the team has taken on his persona because, of course, his Buffalo Bandits persona is legendary.
Yeah, I think, honestly, he just demands it. That's really the only way to put it. He demands you to work hard. demands you blue collar in the corners, off the draws. You better have the ball if you're going in for it. I just think that he is really someone who steps behind the bench and who you want to play for. You want to play that style for, because everyone can go on YouTube and look up and see what he was like and what he's done. And, it's an easy guy to respect, and it's an easy guy to be like, okay, I'm going to go put my nose in the corner for that guy because I know he'd do the same for me.
Right. And goaltending wise, you have two really solid goaltenders. Jackson Brown is great, and Lane Ruska, he's up and coming for the NLL with Saskatchewan. He's got a huge career ahead of him.
Yeah, exactly, and it's amazing. Two guys who are like the rest of our team, super young. They're just like us. They're going to make mistakes at times, but we've been super lucky where we've had two solid goalies where if we have those mental lapses for 4 minutes, we hang them out to dry. We're able to bring a new guy in who can kind of just step in, hold down the fort. And I think they've both really done that in different games, you wouldn't be anywhere without a good goalie. It's tough to go anywhere without a good goalie, yeah.
Absolutely. But I think that you being part of the defensive core and your style of game really fits into what the Kodiaks do. It's that grit, but it's an intelligent grit. It's not taking stupid penalties, doing dumb things. It's being in front, being able to lead the defensive core to get it up the floor, and good in transition as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we try to preach and teach on that back end is just efficiency of movements, right? Be in the right spot at the right time, take the right angle. We want to give them the least probable shot for a goal. So I think that's kind of the way we play defense, and that allows us to get out on guys and play them hard. I just think honestly it's not even my style, kind of. It's just what Brandon's demanded of us, and it's either, like he says all the time, we either grab the rope and pull it all together, or we're not going to get anywhere, kind of thing.
Right. All right, let's go back a little bit here. We're going to go a bit to junior. Of course, you played with Gloucester and you played with the Beaches. I want to talk. We had Matt Spanger on last week, so I want to talk a bit about the Beaches program. And of course, Frank used to call the Beaches back in the 90s, 80s. Frank.
Yep, 90s. Yeah, in the 90s, I did the play-by-play.
We always talk about the funny story there, and the old place.
Yeah, St. John still laughs about.
Paul St. John used to practice by pegging him off up in the booth.
Well, I was tied by the headset, so I could only go so far.
Was it still up at Ted Reeve when you were there?
No, it was at Birchmount Arena.
Okay. Oh, well, that's that's an old.
That's a long time ago.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Used to rain the next day. It would rain on one day, and it would rain the next day in the stadium, in the arena. All the players would have to run around with buckets, because the roof was leaky, and it would leak the next day, and it would rain the next day. So it'd be a sunny day. We'd go, oh, good, it's not. Oh no, it rained yesterday. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. No, back then there was no carpet. You played on the concrete, so there was no carpet, and that's why if they had carpet, then the water wouldn't be. Well, maybe it would be. I don't know. But definitely with the concrete, it was too hard to run on water. So the guys worked really hard to dry up the arena. And it was a lot of fun. Back then, lacrosse was something, it was just getting into that phase that we went through. When the Rock came here and the NLL had that big bump, it was just before that. And so it was on a rise then. It was very, very, very popular. And one thing I do know is the same teams that ruled then rule now, whether you go to Peterborough or you go to BC, it's the same places that rule.
It really is.
The grassroots is
interesting. Yeah. It's always the same places, always the same teams, kind of thing.
So let's talk about the program itself. And you got in there in 2017 for a bit, and then really roared in 2018 and 19.
Yeah, so I was going to Everest Academy at the time. So I had a pretty close relationship with Clem Durazio, who was the GM at the time and the D coach, or O coach at the time. So when my 2017 Junior B season ended, I had played with Peterborough at the start of that season, and then finished out playing Junior B with Gloucester. But since I wasn't signed to an A card with Peterborough, we actually were able to work out like a little backdoor deal that worked out and got me to the beaches for the rest of that season and that playoffs against Six Nations. So it was really interesting to see, and that was before the team had been sold. So that's when I think it was last name was Wilkinson owned the team. Yeah. So it was a little bit different my first year compared to the years after that, for sure. Once Jason Shuttleworth had bought the team, but during those first couple of years, it was interesting, kind of coming in to Toronto, because I think we were in a little bit of that like Coburg situation almost. And it's funny to say because a lot of those guys are on Coburg now who were playing when I came in, like Nick Allerton and Rowan Kelly, Jackson Ishimura will be back there sooner or later. So it was interesting to see and kind of come in. We as a team, we really not much expectations, didn't have much to lose, kind of went in as that 8th seed underdog to that Six Nations team, who I think went undefeated on their way to a Minto in Brampton. But it was really just a stepping stone in building for that next year. And I think that next year, when our 97s were our 5th years, were kind of where we had set our sights on. And obviously, we got past that first round. We were able to beat Burlington as the 8th seed again. And then obviously we ran into Jeff Teat, fresh off a plane from Netanya, and put in 11 points. And that was that. But yeah, it was really interesting to see kind of how we were able to build that organization up to, that last year when we missed the playoffs. Honestly, it was a failure of a year. We wanted to be top 3 in the league. We started out 5-0, and we were thinking, okay, we're going for it. And then, 3 weeks later, we're 5-7. We're at the basement, and it just didn't really end up. But I think it was pretty cool to build from a place where I came in. It was almost like we're here to play, to where we were like, okay, we should be, winning it, trying to go for a Minto. And then I think even more so when Riley O'Connor's come in now, I was lucky where I got to play for 1 year for him. But a lot like Brandon Francis too, he just demands winning. Right? Like that's really bottom line for him is, he's not in there to win one series. He's not in there to finish 20-0. He's in there to win a Minto Cup. So it was really cool to see the progress of that organization as I went along and as I've gotten older since I graduated.
Right. Well, you were in a great time for juniors, because that was probably the best group of juniors that I'd seen in a long time. 2017, you talked about Six Nations was just an absolute all-star team, and most of them are already floating around the NLL. 2018 was the Brampton thing with most of them floating around either PLL or NLL or both. And the beaches coming up as well. So yeah, it was a great time to be there and learn and move ahead with it. You roll into going towards the NLL, and we hit COVID. And let's talk about that before we go into university and stuff. What did you do to keep yourself going? Because us being all locked up, I myself, I hit a wall. That's all I would do.
Yeah.
But how did you keep yourself mentally and physically ready? Because you had to pick things up as soon as the green light was given, right?
Yeah, I honestly, it might sound weird saying, but COVID might have been the best thing, for an athlete. Just a little bit of time off the sport. I know for me, like, there's times where you're an athlete and you're saying to yourself, why am I doing this? Do I love it? Kind of going back. And I think COVID for me just gave me that time, like you said, throwing it back to being 6 years old, walking over to the school and hitting a wall, kind of, messing around in the backyard with my friends or playing 3-on-3 in the park, trying to stay out of sight with my friends. I think it brought a lot of that love back. And like, it brings you back to that time when you're, 6 years, for me, it was always 6 years old at a campground, someone setting up mini stick nets in between games and we're playing, right?
Sure.
So I think for that was kind of really beneficial mentally, just to kind of rediscover that. And, it gives you a little bit of an extra push, especially when I was going into something like the draft, hopefully, a camp the next year or whenever they would come up. But then physically, I was lucky. One of my really, really good friends, Cam Wires, who just played for the men's national team in San Diego, he was back in Ottawa as well, and he went to Loyola University. So we kind of just jerry-rigged my garage, and we would work out, once or twice a day, and just hang out in between and kind of do whatever. But I think honestly there wasn't much to do during that time. But the most beneficial part was just having someone to do with. I can't imagine how hard it would have been trying to work out alone daily. Having that person to push you. That was the biggest part for me. I just needed that extra push sometimes.
Sure. All right, let's go back to you mentioned Everest Academy. Now we've had Hill guys on. We've had Riley O'Connor on here. We've had Mark Millen with his programs. We've had Tom Marichek recently talking about his Sum 42 and their 97% placement. How does Everest match up? And let's talk a bit about the program itself and let's enlighten everybody about it.
Yeah, so the program's ran by Clem Durazio, who is an assistant GM with the Albany Firewolves. Great person. Can't say enough good things about Clem. I honestly, when I went to Everest to start, it was a little bit of a culture shock. Like I was an Ottawa kid where lacrosse wasn't very popular. I'd pick up my stick and I'd be one of the better players on the team, and that was great. And then I show up to my first day of practice at Everest, and I'm out there competing against Latrell Harris, and it's like, oh, this is a bit different. The skill level is a bit higher. So that was interesting to say the least. But really the way it worked is you would get there right in the morning. We'd go out, we'd run like an hour and a half hard practice, come in, we'd have our fitness session. So you'd go in, work out, and then after that, you'd go to school from 10 till 4, whatever it ended up being. So the way the program works, it's very, very similar to the Hill or other programs. I can't speak to it as much in the recent years because I know there's been a little bit of changes since I was there. But I imagine the whole structure of it is the same. Clem is able to set you up in those positions to be successful, whether it's on the lacrosse field, in the gym, or in the classroom. Like I said, I can't say enough good things about him. When I first went there, I honestly wasn't very good. So for me, it's a pretty personal experience to speak about, just because, I went there. I like to think that I worked pretty hard, and, I got to see the success of working hard when you're put in those positions.
Right. All right. You spent some time with the Arena Lacrosse League, and that thing is near and dear to my heart. I do the media for them, so I love everything that Paul St. John has done over the years. You got in there, I think it was the inaugural year, 2018, with Whitby, won the championship. Nice.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the league itself and how important it is to developing you or anybody else in becoming a pro, not just as a player, but how to handle yourself so when you go, you stay.
Well, and that what you just said, that's something that is huge for players who are going into the NLL. So many guys have told me it's hard to make it, but it's even harder to stay in the league.
Mm-hmm.
That's your first year, great, you did it. Your second year is going to be the hardest year to stick, kind of thing. So going there, I was 18 years old. I had talked to Clem, and he thought that why wouldn't you try to go play? So I was 18 years old, and my thought, and it was my dad, his thought was, why don't you just go play against men? Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get hit over 15 times, and then on the 16th time, you're not. So, I decided to do that. When I got to the tryouts, I maybe was a little bit ahead of myself. I didn't have an idea of how actually good the competition was going to be. And I got there, and my head was spinning. So it was pretty cool to be able to play with guys who were way older. I know on our team that first year we had Blaze Reardon, JP Keeley, we had Austin Murphy, who's with us in Coburg now. We had a lot of great players who even just playing 5-on-5 with them in warm up made me a better player. And my biggest thing has always been I want to play against the best. I'll play against the oldest. I'll play against the strongest. When I was younger, I was always looking to play up with my brothers, kind of thing. So going into that, I think that league just provides you the opportunity to actually get the feel for the NLL game before you're actually in the NLL. When you have to maneuver guys who are 60 pounds bigger than you, when I'm going against Eric Fennell in the NLL, there's no difference, kind of thing. Like you learn how to position your body in those ways so that you can be successful around those guys who might be bigger than you or smaller than you.
Right. What about the coaching? From what I've seen, you've got NLL type coaches and some NLL former coaches in there to get that message across to you. So I think that makes it a little bit easier once you do make that leap.
Yeah, 100%. So we had Gavin Prout our first year, and I think the next two years after that as our coach, and that's someone who I was really lucky to know. And Prouter's not a super outspoken guy. He's not gonna give you a whole rundown. Here's 15 good things you did after the game, but when he talks, you listen, and he just throws me little tidbits here and there. Still. There's still times last summer where we were playing Brooklyn and I'd see him and I'd just talk to him. Hey, and he'd always say, hey, how's this? How's this? I saw you here. Great job in this game, like whatever. Having a guy like that be in your corner and be able to actually just be honest with you and tell you, you need to work on this if you want to get to the next level, or you need to work on this if you want to get to the next level is a good thing to have always.
Sure. I think we also neglected one thing is that you guys are playing during the winter season. So I think that the ALL is something like 20 or 25 call-ups to the NLL during the year due to injuries or other things like that. So you guys are game shape ready to go. You don't just hang up your stick after summer ball and, there's always next year.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing for me. Like even I know with New York, I spent time on the practice roster last season. I immediately said to them, well, I can go play ALL, right? Because you should always want to be playing. Like if you're not, whether you're on a practice roster, you're injured, like whatever, you should always want to be doing something. The time you get complacent is the time where someone's going to get better than you. So, I think that league holds a lot of value. And I think with the introduction of the West League too, which I think has been really cool, I think it provides those guys a lot more opportunity because I think sometimes there is a little bit, people talk about it all the time, the East bias. I've met and have friends from out West who are amazing players, but sometimes they just don't get as much notoriety.
Right.
Travel is something that both sides of the equation, are affected by. Right. It's not just the players; it's also management. Yeah. Right. It's just one of the tough things you have to deal with. So yeah, the West is great in the AL.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have them just be able to showcase for those Western NLL teams too, especially.
Well, finally, again, the guys don't have to hang up the sticks after the summer, right? Guys in Alberta, they finally are making a dent in it with making it to the Minto Cup finals. So, yeah, now they can play ALL out West, and it's growing at exponential amounts.
Yeah, like you see how many, I think Team Alberta's won midget. They won it, 2 years in a row, the last 2 times. So, like, you see, like, the game's growing, and, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a time where, in a couple years, we're talking about, maybe a 2-time Minto Cup champion from Alberta. Like those kids I watched them last year. That minors team was good.
Real good. And they were a post away from actually winning that thing.
And they were like, I'm looking at some of these kids and I'm like, oh my God, I better get back in the gym. Farm boys.
That's those big Western kids, boys. Right? The farmers.
Yeah. Who are tough, strong, and now fast too. So it's an eye-opening experience to watch it live. When I was in Brampton watching it, and it's like, my God, the speed that this game came, not just Whitby, but also the Alberta, they were crazy fast.
Yeah, well, they had that one. Who was it? Bennett Smith, I think, or they had 2 really big kids back on that defense for that minors team. I was just like, these kids are so fun to watch. They are sick.
Absolutely. Okay, let's pull ourselves over to Trent and your university years. Now, primarily a box guy, and now you're playing field. Let's talk a bit about that. Was there a big transition to it?
Yeah, I don't know. From being at Everest, I had been lucky where I probably, when I came to Trent, I had been in a little bit more of a field lacrosse environment than some other guys. Like probably there's some guys on our team who I would say, yeah, we played Culver Academy, and they'd be like, "What's Culver Academy?" Like I have no idea. For us in high school, that was the biggest game of the year, the biggest day of the year. Um, so I think honestly, coming over, it allowed me to take a little bit more of a leadership role, just because I had been able to be in those situations.
Right.
Like I'm listening to Curtis Dixon on Back of the Bird today, and he said, like, lacrosse, field lacrosse in Canada is basically box lacrosse on grass. There's no,
Yep.
like for most guys, it's just you go out and you just play box lacrosse on grass. That's all it is. So coming into Trent, you do see that a lot. Guys don't have as much of an idea about what they're doing, or the angles, or like the defensive systems, the strategies, kind of stuff like that. And I would say honestly, field lacrosse is probably more complicated than box.
It's more blueprinted, anyways. Box is more feel.
Yeah, just moving parts, right? Like there's just people moving in front of you all the time. You got to make split second decisions in field that maybe in box you have a little bit of time to save yourself, but in field, some guys are just going to blast it by your ear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for those guys, it did allow me to come in and take that little bit of a leadership role, kind of teaching them, just because I had been in those situations. But I think obviously, we have great coaches all across the board. But last year, I think the biggest thing for us being able to win was the addition of Kyle Sorensen. Man, that guy is that guy. He has a system, and like it works. That's the only way that I can put it. And he's a thinker, and he thinks through every little lacrosse play. And it makes the game pretty easy if you have a coach who thinks through it like that, right?
He had a pretty good mean streak too when he was playing in NLL stuff too.
Yeah. That's why we didn't let up too many goals in the Big Way. We didn't want to.
Yeah, Brock was the meek one of the two.
Yeah.
No, that's cool because Mark Farthing talked glowingly about you. Talking about your style. Again, we're talking about style of play on the floor and on the field. But a thinking guy too, not just grit, but you being a thinking man's player, which I'm sure in field helped out quite a bit.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's kind of what I pride myself on the most. Obviously, I know I'm not the most athletic, and not going to be the biggest. I think me and Connor Kiernan kind of joke around that we might be the shortest guys in the league, and we play on the same team. So you have to be a thinker. You have to be 2 steps ahead of the guy in front of you, and I'm lucky where I get to practice, and Jeff Teet's usually 5 steps ahead of me, and I'm just trying to catch up with him. But it's it's the biggest part of the game. If you can think through it, and you can be in the spots, and you can keep yourself in the right positions, then you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the NLL stuff. You bring up Jeff Teet and that, and we'll get into the Riptide stuff first. You get drafted by Colorado. You go into training camp. Was it what you expected when you got there?
Yeah. Honestly, that whole weekend, the 2 weekends, kind of feel like just a blur at this point. I don't think I had an idea going in what to expect. I hadn't really talked to anyone about it, or asked some guys who I knew, just because I think I wanted to keep myself kind of, I didn't want to hear, you're going to run 50 sprints, and then I'm worrying about running 50 sprints all weekend, right?
Yeah.
I just want to go in, make the best of it. I honestly, I didn't have a great weekend. Just, I think, nerves, and it was a pretty nerve-wracking weekend, to say the least. But I think the way that I got to see kind of Pat Coyle and Andrew McBride run that practice, and the way they were, kind of the professionalism around them, whether it was in a huddle or while we were getting water or whatever, it was beneficial in the sense that I got to see that kind of NLL professionalism, and it just made me probably more successful going on to my next opportunity.
Right.
You guys know that when you're a rookie going in, you may not notice it at first, but the team knows what it's about being a rookie. And is that really the professionalism you're talking about, that they made room for you to basically fit in?
Yeah, like honestly, everyone was just, I think Colorado, especially, they do it. They're one of the best teams organizationally, management wise. I think they are, they're a pros team. So I think, it's just a family. As soon as you're there, you're now part of the Mammoth family until you're not. And that comes from the top down, I know, I forget his name. I think it's Cody Mole, who I think moved over to Vegas now. He was their operations guy while I was there, and he was fantastic. Like he probably had to deal with 25 different things from guys who are probably way more important than me, and he still texted me back or got back to me right away. So that's something that I can really respect, and was pretty cool to go in. Obviously you never know how it's going to kind of turn out or what it's going to be like, but you felt like a pro all weekend when you were there.
Right. Now, you didn't make it with Colorado, and they cut you, but you obviously made an impression because you got scooped up immediately by Albany.
Yeah, I think I was lucky. Obviously it didn't work out in Colorado, and that's probably it is my own fault. I didn't play the best, and I told Pac-Oil that right off the bat. Sorry you didn't get my best. But I had that relationship with Clarkey and Clem. So they had a spot open. They said, do you want to kind of come on for the last weekend of camp? We're having a exhibition game down in Roch. If you'd like to come, you're more than welcome. We'd love to sign you. And I obviously said, yep, 100%. Never going to turn down an opportunity to play professional lacrosse at all.
Of course.
Yeah, so I went down there. I was lucky where I had Jackson Brown. He was there, and Curtis Romanchuk were two of my really good friends who also go to Trent. So we all kind of got to go together, which I think different than Colorado, where I didn't know anyone going in. It did lighten the mood a little bit. And then, just getting into the dressing room, you see Jackson Nishimura, I see Ethan Woods, who I know, obviously Dougie Jameson's the nicest guy in the world and the funniest guy in the world. So he brightens up the room pretty quickly. But I think going into that, I kind of just took what I learned in Colorado and all the pressure that I'd put on myself. And I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go out and play. Whatever happens, happens. And I ended up playing way, way better in Rochester that weekend than I had in Colorado in 2 weekends. And, I just ended up scoring a goal. I think I got under Curtis Knight and Sean Evans' skin a little bit, made a little bit of an impression there. And then Clem called me on the way home from that weekend. He said, yeah, B Manny is still injured. So if you would like to join us on our active roster for opening weekend, then we'd love to have you. And I said, heck yeah. And away we went. And then I played my first game in Toronto, I think a week or two later.
Wow. Now let's talk about, we had Clarkey on a few weeks back. Let's talk about him as a coach and all the things that he taught you. And again, being your first foray into the NLL, was it made easier by him?
Yeah, 100%. Man, Clarkey taught me everything I know, probably. Defense wise, going into junior, he, I don't think he really knew who I was coming into the beach, and I don't really think he knew what he was getting. But I think when he kind of saw my style and the way that I play, he was able to help me out a lot. There was times where he would want to probably grab me by the mask and pull me in real close and tell me to stop when I was taking some silly penalties. But, he was always there, always on the bench. He's not a guy who's going to yell and scream at you. Sometimes you need that, and he gets it. But he's the kind of guy who, he's going to say, you messed up. Yeah. You messed up. Yeah. Okay. Move on. Next play. But I think just defensively, kind of the structure that he brought to our Beaches team, and just the little intricacies of the game, like if you're pushing a guy down the wall, just kind of having your stick in his hands, as the bottom guy on the PK, he always preached, you better be in that shooting lane. So even if you don't block that pass or you don't pick off that pass, you better be blocking the shot. There's no other way. And I always liked the way that Clarkey taught it, where we just had non-negotiables. Like non-negotiable people can't get under the crease. Non-negotiable guys can't just get through the middle without getting touched.
Right.
And I think that just kind of spoke, like Francis, to the kind of player that he was. He just demands you to play that way. There's no other way. If you're not going to play that way, then you're not going to be on the floor for him.
Right.
But yeah, like I said, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Clarkie. I think he's probably made me the box lacrosse player that I am today, being able to be coached by him for 3 straight summers. So I couldn't say enough good things about Clarkie from junior up to the NLL. He's always been great to me.
Right. You get into 8 games there. You had 2 assists, 13 loose balls, 6 caused turnovers. So obviously you were getting assimilated into the league, and it seemed as though Albany was a good fit for you.
Yeah. Obviously, with those guys there, I think that it was the best situation for me. I'll always say I don't think there's any better teammates in the league than Riley O'Connor, Brett Mandy, John LaFontaine. Being surrounded by those guys in my first year, that's incredible. Like there's guys who I'm sure go through their whole career without being surrounded by one guy like that, let alone 3. Right? So I think kind of getting into that first season, I think the biggest part about it is just learning how to be a pro. You're learning how to take care of yourself before the games. You're learning, how hard to take it up practice, shoot around, all this stuff. You're learning kind of the timing of the game. Like I remember junior, I would show up 2 hours before the game. In the NLL, I show up 4 hours before, because there's so much more to do. Right, you got to take yourself through preparation to another level. And those guys were amazing at teaching me that. Joe Resitera is another guy who takes preparation to another level. So it was always nice to be able to see guys like that, kind of play with them, go with them to the arena, see how they take care of themselves and do all that stuff. And then just on the floor, I think the biggest thing is, you're going to make mistakes. Everyone, as a rookie, the best players in the league still make mistakes. And I think just having those guys there who are, who understand that you're a rookie, we're going to make those mistakes and we're going to move along with them. And I think it made it a little bit easier. There would be times where we'd shorten the bench, and I'm not going to sit there and throw a fit about it. That's what happens. It's a business. And during those times, I'd be the first guy where they come off to be like, great play, do it again. So I think it's a little bit of give and take as a rookie. You need those guys to kind of give you that nurturing, kind of support when you do mess up. But when you got to know your role. You're the 10th, 11th guy on the depth chart. If you're not going to play the last 5 minutes, you better be the loudest guy on the bench.
Absolutely. Okay, so you get moved January this year for Leo Sturris, one of your coaches at Everest, right?
Yeah.
Talk about, first off, you get traded, the psyche on that one. You moved to New York, but Albany moves you. So right away, we talked to Spanger about it, and it's like, yeah, my first thing is that they don't want me, but then there's a new episode, and new challenge. Was it the same with you?
Yeah, I think it probably hit a bit closer to home, just because I had never, I would have been fine playing my entire career out in Albany and playing with Clarkie, and that's obviously not something that happens often in the NLL at all. So that's probably not realistic. But that's what when I had re-signed there, that was my thinking, was that I'm perfectly fine being here for a long time, just because I love Clarkie, I love the organization, I love the guys in the room and the way they play. So it was a bit of a stinger when he called me. But obviously, he's trying to do what's best for his team. Like I said, it's a business, right? So for me, because I had that personal connection, I don't think my mind went as much that way as they don't want me. I think, I'll forever be grateful for what Clarkie did for me, Clem did for me. They gave me my first opportunity in the NLL, gave me my first opportunity to play a game, and that's something that I'll forever be grateful for. And, Clarkie was great when we were on the phone. He just honestly said to me, this might just be a better situation for you. And I hope it is. And, he's not just saying that to say that. He truly means it, because he cares about every guy who he coaches.
Right. Now you get into New York, and it gives you a chance to be full-time on the roster, first off. So that's a definite plus. You're playing for Ladouceur, and I guess at that time still Veltman before all the changes took place.
Yeah, I think the changes had taken place just before me.
Okay.
I think Rich was, because when I had been moved over, Rich was the guy who I was talking to most of the time.
Okay. Yeah. So they had just happened. So
Yeah.
things are fresh and things were moving in there.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of bad bounces, and that team's a whole different position also.
Yeah, like, man, it's the tail of my lacrosse career. Just like Beaches, Coburg, like just like, the little bit more. But this team, like when I first came in, Riley O'Connor pulled me aside and he was like, and Ocon's someone who's become one of my really good friends. From playing with him that NLL season to being coached by him the summer before. To be honest with him, I didn't really like him before I was coached by him. But then he's an amazing person. He's someone who I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for. But he pulled me aside and he said, "Yeah, like, sucks getting traded, eh?" Because I had been talking to him about it at the Minto after he got traded, and so it was kind of funny talking to him. But he just looked at me and he just said, "It's a pretty good spot being on a team with Jeff Teat, though, so I think you'll be okay." But it's kind of funny just going down there, moving teams. It's a different dynamic, definitely in New York than we had in Albany. But I think this team is destined for pretty great things. I mean, like, how many times do you have 13 D guys who can all play at any point, right? Like, how many times do you have 4 goalies who could be a number one on like any team, right? How often do you have a generational talent mixed with a guy who's as selfless as Connor Kiernan, like, or Riley O'Connor or Larson Sundown? Like, all these guys, they just want to win, and that's it. So there's going to be mental lapses. We're in kind of that zone where we're just on the cusp. But it's just going to take everyone to pull that rope a little bit more, and we'll come out on the other end.
I had a friend of mine that was on the team. I actually went to Prague with him. Bryce told me for a little bit, and he was talking about coming into camp there and even practices. And now he's got to defend Jeff Teat. Oh joy, oh bliss. Talk about the practices, because obviously there's some games that are, man, it's easier in the game than it is playing against him.
Well, yeah, and that's a thing, man. Like, if you're making yourself better in practice, then like you're going to be so much better off in a game, right? So I think that, and Jeff's someone who wants what's best for the team too, and I think he understands that, where he wants you to get better in practice, so he's going to go as hard, and if you take a set off, he's going to make you look silly, right? But even beyond him, right? Like, we have just so many good players on that offense who do so much. Larson Sundown's a guy who's a small guy, but if you take a set off, he's going to drive you all the way back to the crease, and someone's going to rip a shot over your shoulder, kind of thing. Kiernan's a guy who, if you take one set off and you look the wrong way, he's slipping to the inside and throwing it behind the back top corner. So, our offense, it works out well, because I think we get after each other a good amount. And I think Laddie demands that from us. He wants high intensity, high tempo. He wants you to practice hard for the time that we're out there. We're not going to stay out there forever, but we're going to make each other better while we are out here.
How hard is it to be patient, in advancing? How did you work out in your mind the patience of going from the guy that got cut to the guy that's a mainstay on the team?
Yeah, I think you kind of just roll with the punches as it goes. I'm not going to sit here and say that I was so happy all year just to be there, because obviously as an athlete, you're not just happy to be there, right? You want to be playing. So there was weekends where obviously I'm still in school. I have a job, kind of stuff like that. I'd be like, oh, it would be so much easier to just stay home rather than have to travel across the country to sit in the stands. But at the same time, like, you're going to play lacrosse, and then like you also remember what happens. One guy gets food poisoning the night before, like, so it's just constantly keeping yourself in that time where my time could be right away, right? Like, you never know. For me to play my first game, it took 2 guys got injured the week before the game. And so, luck of the draw, that I got in, but it just painted that picture of you never know in this league. You might be in, guys' flights might get canceled. Guys might miss their flights. Guys might be stuck at work. Wife might have a baby. Like, these are all things that I've just encountered my first 2 years. And I think that's the important part of keeping in your mind that you're right there. You're right on the corner. So don't take a step back.
So in other words, your name's on the roster. You never know when it'll be called if you're not normally the one that's called.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the patience you need.
And there'd be times where I was back and forth in Albany with the practice roster, and Clarkie would call me on a Thursday and say, "Yep, you're flying out Friday." And that's the way it goes. But throughout the week, I would plan like I was playing no matter what. And then if I'm not traveling with the team, all right, well then I'll get an extra day to work out, and then I get 2 days off, and I'll go do something with my friends or play ALL or whatnot. And then on that Monday, it's back to the same thing. It's back to acting like you're playing till you're not, right?
Right. Now I got a Muffler Mike question for you before we call it a day. Of course, his question is, what part of your game were you looking to improve this year, and do you think you accomplished it?
I think for me, it was getting a little more comfortable with the game. I think kind of like I'm sure you see, like in Coburg, I play a bit of a different style than I would in New York. I play a bit more reserved in New York, right? Because I obviously am at the bottom of that totem pole, and you just want to make sure, if people can't notice you on defense, then you're doing a good job. That's what I always say. But I think going into this year, I finished out in Vancouver with a good last game. I think I had 2 or 3 points. So I think just building on that transition part of my game, because I think I do have decent hands for a D guy. I won't say good. I won't go that far, but I'll say decent. And then
you're scoring goals at the professional level. You got good hands.
All right. Hey, you said it, not me. But I think just beyond that, kind of just being able to use my speed. It's not so much, you kind of talk to NHL players, it's more fine tuning than really changing up their game, right? And I think there's just stuff that they want to change from the last season. So going in, I think I can just be more of a threat with this New York team in transition, especially with guys up there like Domini, who's running with me, and a bunch of those other guys. So Brownie is another one who's usually going. But I think for me, just making sure I don't think I'd call myself a mainstay just yet. I'd give it another season before I start doing that. But I think I just want to do that, and then hopefully build on my transition game and build myself into a more complete player for sure.
Right. That's what makes you more of a pro, right? From game to game, from week to week, season to season. That's what you have to do. You have to adjust. It's about adjusting.
Exactly, right? Like you're not changing anything. Everyone's here because they're talented, right? It's just, some guys know how to adjust their game better than others. That's it.
You're
defining being who you are, playing who you are. That's the whole point of adjusting, not changing.
100%. 100%.
Just before we end, I got one final thing for you is, now that you got a few years under your belt, how has your outlook changed on the league and as you as a pro?
Honestly, it's still kind of weird. Like I'll go home and it still kind of feels like a dream at some points. Like to be completely honest with you, like I am still just a student. So I go to school sometimes, and people are like, "Oh, what are you doing this weekend?" It's like, "Oh, I'm flying to Georgia," and they're like, "What?" So like, it still feels kind of weird. So that outlook, I don't think that like initial fog and that kind of like initial coolness of it has really faded away at all. I think coming into the league, it was something that always seemed night and day above what I was, or even when I was playing junior A or ALL, it seemed night and day above both those leagues. So I think honestly, just getting into the league, you start to see it as like, oh, like I can do this. Like this is, this, it just feels kind of like normal almost. Like sometimes I'm out there, and I know in Buffalo this year when we had that OT game, I think there was like 16,000 fans. But it's like funny when you're running around the floor and you feel like you're back in junior with like 10 fans in the arena.
Right.
Like it's just, you know, like the game seems to like morph and adjust to how you always had it, right? But then for me as a pro, I think it's just honestly, I don't know. Maybe it'll start to feel normal one day. But yeah, I think it's still, you know, the coolest thing in the world. And I would be lying to you guys if I said I'm not going to tell everyone that I'm a professional lacrosse player, because I definitely do.
As long as you keep that mindset, you're going to be there a long time.
Yeah, it's the
when
whole.
it starts becoming normal, you'll be behind the bench.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for taking this time with us. It's been a really quick hour, so thank you so much. Wish you all the best in the summer and in the fall, coming back into the Riptide and the rest of that.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much.
I'm glad you survived Griller Gary Group. So
you know, hey, I did my best, right?
Yeah. It's like being on the grill, right? It's like being raw meat. No, it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys, the players and everyone involved in lacrosse. We love the game, and it's a game unique. Not like many others. I mean, I don't know many games that they play all year round. I know they practice. I know they do all this other stuff in other sports, but here you get a whole new set of guys to play with and a whole new set of guys to play against. It's a lot of fun. It looks like a lot of fun from where I'm sitting.
It definitely is. Yeah, no, it's interesting, and you know, honestly, being on this Coburg team with this group of young guys, it's just been a really like fun summer. Like on the bench, you know what? 2-10 record aside, you know, like it's just a fun group of guys to be around, which I think, you know, is the beauty of the game. Like, you know, we're there, we're happy when we're playing, whether you're winning or you're losing. You know what? Like, I'm just happy to be playing the game that I love.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for playing the game that you love and sharing it with us. It was really a great conversation. Like Gary said, it flew right by.
Yeah, I know. I just looked up at the corner and I was like, holy.
All right. Thanks for doing this.
Right, no problem, guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
All right. He's Curtis Conley, and for Gary Grube, I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Thank you for watching NLL Talk. We'll talk to you next time. We're here normally Thursdays at 4 p.m. Today was a very special occasion that Curtis helped us out with. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.